My mother-in-law is a liar and has been at peace with me for 7 years. In the first month of my pregnancy, my husband finally couldn't stand it. I sent my mother-in-law to the Good Mother-in-Law training class. 6 months after sending my mother-in-law to the Good Mother-in-Law training class, I heard that my mother-in-law had ranked first in the class, and even performed well many times. She was encouraged by the teacher, so Gu Huai and I told her to pick her mother-in-law back. It was just winter that day, and how much did I think it's a little cold? My mother-in-law is leading a big black bag, wearing a long black skirt, and even covering her ankles. This is the color that my mother-in-law has never worn, and she has never worn such a long skirt. My mother-in-law likes colorful short skirts, even leopard-printed leather ones. In short, she likes those sexy short skirts. I once thought it was because my father-in-law died too early, but when my mother-in-law faced Gu Huai, she always wore a black chest skirt and even let Gu Huai lie on her lap. "Mom, I'm here to pick you up. Gu Huai's company has something to do and can't come. I'll help you get your bag." I just came across the bag, and my mother-in-law's is the condition. The reflection retreated, and even her body trembled a little. His hand holding the bag turned slightly white. I saw that she not only lost her usual bracelet and manicure on her hand, but also had some thick cocoons. "Mom, what's wrong with you?" Yuan, it's my mother's fault. How can a good mother-in-law ask her daughter-in-law to help her get things? The teacher said that the daughter-in-law is the biggest, and I'll take it. My mother-in-law suddenly spoke mealy, which I never thought of. Usually my mother-in-law pressed my forehead with her hand and cursed. "I'm ugly and disobedient. I asked you to be a nanny, otherwise why should I find a daughter-in-law?" I have to thank the teacher here. My best friend is really right. My mother-in-law just needs training. I covered my stomach and got into the car. For the sake of the child, Gu Huai specially asked someone to buy a special car to take me, and even hire a driver. When I was bored, the driver would take me around. My mother-in-law sat in the corner and put her bag under the chair. I gave my mother-in-law the food prepared in the car. My mother-in-law's lowered eyes slowly raised, and then lowered again. Yuan, it's not mealtime yet. I can't eat these, and this is a bird's nest which is very precious. I'd better leave it to you and the child. My mother-in-law lowered her eyes and looked very careful. Her curly hair turned into dry short hair. I just noticed that my mother-in-law's favorite curly hair was her treasure. Once my mother-in-law used the wrong towel and always blamed me for hurting his hair. "It's okay, Mom. There's still a lot at home. Besides, this is not your favorite thing before." "No, I don't like it now. The teacher said that you can't eat such expensive things." After saying that, my mother-in-law couldn't help shaking, as if she evoked some bad memories. When I got home, the nanny was not there. She probably went to buy vegetables. My mother-in-law stood on the shoe rack for a moment and hesitated for a long time before she came to me. I thought I had a big belly and walked slowly and normally, but my mother-in-law was too abnormal. I sent my mother-in-law back to his room, and my mother-in-law suddenly shouted, Yuan, change the room for me. This room is too big. And the color of those clothes is so beautiful that the teacher won't let you wear them. Mom, you have graduated and are not in school. These are your favorites before. I comforted my mother-in-law, but he suddenly withdrew his hand and hid in the corner tremblingly. I hurried to see my mother-in-law and saw the needle eye on her neck, a dense needle eye. The teacher said that a good mother-in-law should take good care of her family. She can't wear those colorful clothes, let alone eat expensive things. She should leave good things to her family. Mom, you're not at school now. You have graduated. What are those needles around your neck? My mother-in-law didn't seem to hear what I said. She just trembled and sent me back to the room. 2. After returning to the room, I still couldn't sleep. My mother-in-law's change was so great that it was completely different from before. In the past, my mother-in-law even asked Gu Huai to help with the bath towel every time she took a shower. Every time she wore a black suspender, she appeared in my room with Gu Huai and me. When we were making out, she opened the door of our room. For this reason, Gu Huai and I had to lock the bedroom door when we slept, but my mother-in-law still found a spare key. I sent a message to the training teacher and asked about the training course, but the training teacher did not reply, probably because it was too late. At night I heard a sound. I immediately thought there was a thief in the house, so I went out with a golf club. Unexpectedly, I happened to see my mother-in-law stealing food. My mother-in-law sat in front of the refrigerator and ate the leftovers in the evening. Mom, you're hungry. Why don't you call the nanny? I'll ask the nanny to cook something for you. The mother-in-law was shocked and stood up quickly, as if she were a child who had done something wrong. Yuan, it's just a pity to see these dishes. They will go bad tomorrow. It's my fault. I shouldn't have eaten them secretly. I'm really damned. With that, my mother-in-law began to slap her face, slapped her again and again, and I was a little shocked. I wanted to stop it, but my mother-in-law knelt down in my blank eyes. My mother-in-law said pitifully, Yuan and my legs are weak. I didn't mean to make a fool of myself. Don't blame me. It's my fault. It's all my fault. Don't send me to school, okay? I walked over to help my mother-in-law up, but found that my mother-in-law's legs could no longer stand, and she had incontinence. She is so afraid of the teacher in the training class. Mom, what did the teacher do to you? How did you become like this today? What's going on? As I said, I felt a coquettish smell coming out, so I stood still and called Gu Huai. My mother-in-law was scared, especially when she heard me and Gu Huai on the phone. Yuan, don't tell Gu Huai. I'll listen to you. I'm a good mother-in-law. I shouldn't steal food. I should clean the house. Yuan, I will do it well. I will definitely do it well. That I still don't listen and insist on calling Gu Huai. The mother-in-law lifted her long skirt first, revealing her legs. My mother-in-law loves beauty very much, especially her legs, which are basically raised by soaking in milk. The originally fair legs have turned into potholes, and there are even some new scabs which were made about a few days ago, and the traces look like they have been beaten by something. Mom, what did the teacher do to you? My mother-in-law quickly put down her skirt and begged me. Mom, it's okay, Yuan. I hope you don't send me back. I just want to be a good mother-in-law. I've really changed it. My mother-in-law took my hand, but was thrown away by me. The moment my mother-in-law touched me, I suddenly remembered the day I was almost beaten to death by my mother-in-law, and my voice also became colder. I know, Mom, it's too late. Go to bed. Let me know if you feel uncomfortable. But behind him came his mother-in-law's voice, a miserable voice. Yuan, why don't you come to see me? Why don't you come to see me? I didn't expect my mother-in-law to say such a thing. After all, my mother-in-law and I are enemies. I stopped. I went to see you, but you said it was very good and comfortable inside. That's right. In the past 6 months, I have visited my mother-in-law several times, and she said she was very happy. Even my mother-in-law is the first in the class. If you had come earlier and taken me out earlier, I wouldn't have been like this, Yuan. I feel so bad. My mother-in-law broke down and cried, but I turned around again. Mom, you just said you were going to be a good mother-in-law. What's the matter now? Are you going to start doing it again? Are you just not wanting me to sleep well and deliberately embarrass me? Because of my mother-in-law's sudden me city, I have forgotten what kind of person my mother-in-law was before. If there is another time, I will call the teacher. Behind him was indeed the mother-in-law's voice. Yuan, Mom is wrong. Mom must be a good mother-in-law. I didn't answer. In my mother-in-law's eyes, I returned to my room, but it was a little difficult to toss and turn. My mother-in-law did it. She became safe and even very obedient. However, every time she saw some sharp objects, she still broke down emotionally, and even had to kneel down and apologize to me as long as she did something wrong. She kept repeating what I couldn't understand, but soon she recovered and became a docile mother-in-law. I thought the days would always pass like this. 3. It was not until the 4th day when my mother-in-law came back that my sister-in-law came to her door. When I was still sleeping, I heard the sound of quarrels outside. When I walked out of the room, I saw Gu Shui in the living room and the man following her. My mother-in-law only promises to stand out on the side. With a well-behaved and obedient look, seeing me covering my stomach, my mother-in-law immediately ran over and cared about me. Yuan, I'm sorry, Xiaoxue has to come over. Will it affect your rest? It's my mother's fault. As the mother-in-law said, she began to shed tears, looking fragile. When Gu Shui saw her mother-in-law's appearance, she immediately stepped on the sky and walked to my side. Gu Shui in a red skirt was very eye-catching. As far as I know, Gu Shui spent about 300,000 yuan on her face every month. Zhao Yuan, what have you done to my mother? I've only been abroad for a while, and you've become what my mother is like. Gu Shui said and raised her hand. It was about to fall on my face. When my mother-in-law saw this, she quickly blocked me. With a snap, there was a clearly visible palm mark on her mother-in-law's face, and even her nose began to bleed. Gu Shui was so angry that she didn't expect her mother-in-law to block her chin. Mom, what are you doing? She is Zhao Yuan, the woman my brother married without spending money. What are you doing now? My mother-in-law looked flattering and took my hand, worrying about whether I would be scared. Xiaoxue, it was my mother's fault before. Now I just want to be a good mother-in-law and let Yuan and the child be good. Gu Shui didn't expect that these words would come out of her mother-in-law's mouth. Because when I was in love with Gu Huai before, my mother-in-law already knew about me, orphans and no parents, but Gu Huai was so kind to me that I ignored the importance of family. When my mother-in-law proposed not to give the dowry, I gladly agreed. However, these are just the beginning. Although the Gu family is not from a rich family, they have a small company and never worry about money. This is also the reason why I am curious about why Gu Huai would like me as a helpless orphan. Gu Huai repeatedly emphasized that it was because of love and love at first sight. And because of Gu Huai, I was very obedient in Gu's family, But I soon found that my mother-in-law and sister-in-law had changed their faces. Every time they wanted to pick on the food I cooked, and they insulted me at any time. There was a nanny at home, but because of my arrival, the nanny was dismissed so that I needed to do everything myself. My mother-in-law would step on her high heels and pass by me every time, almost stepped on my feet every time, but the little sister-in-law next to me would also coax on the side. I just said, don't let me talk about it myself. He is so excellent, how can he marry such a woman? Gu Shui, the little sister-in-law, keeps repeating cheap goods, discounting and cheap labor. I know it's useless for me to refute. Once I refute, it will accelerate the end of this marriage. No matter how difficult my mother-in-law and sister-in-law are, every time Gu Hui comes back from a business trip, he will comfort me, and then I have survived year after year. As for the real reason why my sister-in-law is here now, I also know that it is a piece of land in the south of the city. My father-in-law died early, but he had a good vision. The house he bought in the south of the city was already worth 100 million yuan because it was photographed by the director's team and the location. When my mother-in-law didn't enter the good mother-in-law training base, she had already promised to give the house to Gu Shui, but she was obstructed by Gu Hui, so the matter was over. Seeing that my mother-in-law was still protecting me, my sister-in-law had to pull the man next to him to sit on the sofa. Zhao Yuanyuan, we are hungry. Since you are here, let's cook quickly. Almost in an ordered tone, regardless of my mother-in-law and me, Gu Shui kissed the man openly. I touched my bulging belly and sat on the sofa, gently touching the little life. Mom, although Gu Shui is already a 25-year-old child, the indecent action she is doing now will affect the grandson of the Gu family. What if the child sees her, so mom, kick her out? 4. Gu Shui stopped her French kiss and looked at me with resentful eyes. Zhao Yuanyuan, what are you talking about? I kissed my boyfriend. It's none of your business. You used to be a hen who couldn't lay eggs. How could you suddenly get pregnant? Maybe it's not my brother's child. Gu Shui stood up again and pulled her mother-in-law on one side. Mom, you said something. I didn't make a report before, and we didn't make Zhao Yuanyuan pregnant last time. Gu Shui said proudly. He thought that his mother-in-law would protect me only for the sake of the child. Then she thinks she is wrong. The mother-in-law's hand in the apron was raised and then hit Gu Shui's face. The mother-in-law, who was still fragile just now, changed instantly, fierce and scary. Xiaoxue, mom said that you can't bully Yuanyuan. As for what happened before, I was confused. I actually bullied Yuanyuan with you. Now you kneel down and apologize to Yuanyuan. Mom, what are you talking about? You asked me to kneel down and apologize to this bitch. Gu Shui looked at me incredulously, and the man behind her also stood up with a bang, and did not look optimistic at the beginning. Auntie, Xiaoxue is your daughter. This woman is an outsider. How can you do this to Xiaoxue? This sentence is extremely familiar to me several years ago, because I touched the money on my mother-in-law's table before. There was no other reason. I didn't have money to buy vegetables. I happened to see the money left by my mother-in-law. After sending a message to my mother-in-law, I took it to buy vegetables. When I came back, I happened to see my mother-in-law and sister-in-law who had done their beauty. Mother-in-law, my mother-in-law bullied me in all kinds of ways, and I was sent to the good mother-in-law training course 39,103. My father-in-law died early, and my mother-in-law had several little lovers. These were all done by my sister-in-law. Every time I reminded Gu Hui, because Gu Hui was too busy, there was no way to deal with them abroad. When my sister-in-law saw that I bought some meat, she immediately complained to her mother-in-law. Mom, look at where Zhao Yuanyuan got the money. How could she have money to buy things? That I didn't know what was going on at all, and I was beaten up by their little lovers. How can a woman's strength be compared with that of a man? I was beaten and lay on the floor dying, and my sister-in-law was holding a tablet and looking at the camera. It turned out that they were afraid that I would take away the Gu family's property, so they put more than a dozen cameras in the villa. In this case, why do you want me to marry here? I resented Gu Shui. At that moment my eyes seemed to kill people. Gu Shui was immediately scared and ordered the two strong men next to me to hit me in the face, which made me unable to open my eyes. In the struggle my clothes were torn apart, and Gu Shui laughed. You, a woman, actually wear such underwear. How good do you think you are? I asked you to seduce my brother, and I'll take a video and put it on the internet. After saying that, Gu Shui took a picture of my bare skin with her mobile phone, and even deliberately took off my underwear. Mom, if my brother sees this, will he divorce this cheap man immediately? But the mother-in-law immediately snatched Gu Shui's mobile phone and deleted the content in it. This woman is still useful. Her money hasn't arrived yet. When her money is everywhere, you can play as you want. There are several women like Zhao Yuanyuan, and your brother has several outside. My mother-in-law's words suddenly exploded like thunder in my noisy sea. Gu Hui cheated on me. However, my mother-in-law's words surprised me even more. Zhao Yuanyuan, you are just an outsider. Xiaoxue is my daughter and Xiaoxue's boyfriend. You will always be an outsider of our Gu family. Don't try to take a penny from the Gu family, and your parents' inheritance is all from our Gu family. 5. At that time I was beaten and lying on the ground dying. My mother-in-law and sister-in-law thought I was dizzy, so I said the rest. Otherwise, I wouldn't have known that the reason why my father-in-law died was that my parents' tragic death that year had something to do with my father-in-law. A murderer had just been released from prison and killed passionately, killing my parents who was going to buy me a cake. The passing father-in-law could have saved my parents. But when he heard the high compensation, he did not call 120, but waited for a long time before making an emergency call, which also caused my parents to miss the first aid time, and my father-in-law sent my parents away. At that time, I was seriously injured by my mother-in-law's little lover. I lay in the hospital for a month before I recovered. When I opened my eyes, why do I remember what happened a few years ago now? I brought good black tea and smiled at my mother-in-law. Mom, Xiaoxue really found a very bad boyfriend. Do you know what to do with disobedient men? Gu Shuai was inexplicably angry and wanted to rush over and hit me again. My mother-in-law stopped me again, but I stood aside coldly. Xiaoxue, your brother was also a very bad man before. Do you know how I made him obedient? On my way back with him, I broke his leg and sent him to the training institution. You see, he is much better now. He is completely a good man. I laughed. Now Gu Huai is a good man, and he even said that there is no better man in the world than Gu Huai. Zhao Yuanyuan, what nonsense are you talking about? How could you break my brother's leg? Gu Shuai looked at me in disbelievably. How can it be impossible? I saw your brother and other women come out of the hotel that I talked to him. He didn't expect that I had other things in my hand. After I broke his leg, I couldn't drag him at all. Do you know how much effort I wasted? Madman, it's impossible. Gu Shuai shouted angrily, but was blocked by her mother-in-law. Xiaoxue, I'll teach you a lesson, your sister-in-law. At first glance, she is not a normal person. The man next to Gu Shuai just made a move, but he didn't have the speed of his mother-in-law. His mother-in-law had knocked out the man with the golf club next to her. I put down the black tea leisurely, looking at the color like blood. The wicked should be rewarded with evil. This family of evil people has no heaven to accept. I'll take it. At that time when I was lying in the hospital, a lawyer came and told me the inheritance left to me by my family. It turned out that the house in the south of the city was also my parents', and other inheritances added up to about 1 billion. The lawyer asked me how to deal with it. I looked at the pure white ceiling. At that time I almost went blind in one eye. I want revenge, I said coldly. After that I found the cheating Gu Huai. It turned out that he was the same as his mother, but one singing red face and the other singing black face. I broke Gu Huai's legs and sent him to the Good Husband Training Institution. Then I sent a message to my mother-in-law and sister-in-law with Gu Huai's mobile phone, saying that her little lover was pregnant and planned to go to Sanya for her honeymoon. Mother-in-law and sister-in-law naturally don't doubt it. After half a year, Gu Huai came out and began to help me tidy up the Gu family. I began to keep learning to do business. It seems that Gu Huai controls Gu's company, or rather me behind it. My grades have always been the first because I have no money and no power. I can only rely on learning and amazing ability to win the likes of others. I always thought this was Gu Huai's good appearance. However, their family just treats me as a fool. Point 6. Now I looked coldly at Gu Shuai, who was so scared in front of me. Gu Shuai's exquisite makeup was so scared that she turned white, but her mother-in-law was dealing with the man and sent the golf club to Gu Shuai's hand. Gu Shuai looked at the golf club handed over and pushed it aside in fright, but I picked it up again, put it in Gu Shuai's hand, and wiped off the fingerprints of me and my mother-in-law. Xiaoxue, after I sent your brother, I found that my mother was also very disobedient, so I sent you abroad for a while, so that I could send my mother to the good mother-in-law training class. Do you think it was your brother who asked you to go to the United States? It's me. I spent money to let you travel around the world and let you break your shoes with men. You spend my money but you still want to bully me. After I finished speaking, I felt uncomfortable in my stomach. I turned my head and said to my mother-in-law that it was uncomfortable. My mother-in-law immediately calmed me down. However, I didn't expect that Gu Shuai called the police at this moment. When the police came, they saw me in the red. I was immediately sent to the hospital, and my mother-in-law followed me silently. Gu Shuai didn't dare to do anything at all. She just emphasized to the police that I was a murderer. Of course, the police don't believe it. They believe in witnesses and evidence. After I gave birth to the child, the police inquired about the situation at that time. It turned out that the mother-in-law accidentally hit the man's central nerve at that time, causing the man's lower limbs to be paralyzed. That is to say, the man could only move his head and fingers. I was lying on the VIP hospital bed, and even Gu Huai, who was still in a meeting abroad, was making a video call. Gu Huai wanted to talk, but I hung up. Miss Zhao, did you direct your mother-in-law to attack the victim? I smiled calmly. I'm pregnant, my mother-in-law is a gentle person. Of course my sister is not a rude person. Although she dislikes her partner, she can't find such a clumsy reason. Gu Shui had already collapsed and even kept roaring loudly. Mr. Policeman, it's Zhao Yuanyuan a bitch. His child is not my brother's, but she wronged me. However, the mother-in-law on one side slapped Gu Shui in the face. Xiao Shui. It's your own dissatisfaction with your boyfriend. How can you dislike your boyfriend? You can't bully Yuanyuan. Gu Shui was shocked again. She couldn't say anything. Later, after being adjusted by the police, Gu Shui was responsible for his paralyzed boyfriend. If Gu Shui was not responsible, she would go to prison. Only then did Gu Shui promise the police that she would take care of the paralyzed man. A few days later, my mother-in-law ran over and said, Yuan and Xiao Shui sold the sleeper. Mom didn't participate in it. You won't blame me, will you? I looked at my mother-in-law coldly. Sure enough, Gu Shui, the woman, did not stop. There was no way to start from the Gu family, so she started from the house. Mom, you are a good mother, but not a good mother-in-law. Hearing my words, my mother-in-law immediately felt uneasy. I was wrong, Yuanyuan. That house is yours, not Gu's, and Xiao Shui won't take it away. My mother-in-law has become a good mother-in-law, just like Gu Huai. I called the lawyer and asked the lawyer to go to the house. Soon Gu Shui's fuss about the house became a hot topic. The next day, the mother of the paralyzed man came to her, dragged her family with several children, and told Gu Shui's all kinds of sins as soon as she came up. I listened one by one. In order to express my apology, I asked Gu Huai to take out 3 million to the paralyzed man to express the determination of the Gu family. When the woman heard this, she held my hands happily and thanked me in a trembling voice. Gu Shui, who followed behind, was not so easy to deal with. Gu Shui kept accusing me of being kind and said to the mother of the paralyzed man, It was this woman who harmed your family. If we sue him together, the compensation will definitely be more than 3 million. But the woman shook off Gu Shui's hand heavily. You and Miss Zhao are a family. Why are you so vicious? I smiled beside him and asked Gu Huai to change the payment. The 3 million is divided into 1,000 a month. Gu Shui collapsed again. Guarding the injured man, she didn't even fly away with 3 million yuan. Naturally, she couldn't be happy. Even in order to take revenge on me, Gu Shui ran to the hospital every time to make trouble, but she was stopped by her mother-in-law one by one. For my safety, her mother-in-law hired bodyguards. When I transferred from VIP to the birth center, the woman who was in the month with me was very envious of me. Your mother-in-law is so kind. Why have I never met such a good mother-in-law? I smiled and didn't say anything, but my mother-in-law peeled apples for me seriously. Unexpectedly, Gu Shui still didn't give up. She found the Yuezi center, and the security guard brought Gu Shui to me. At this moment, Gu Shui was quite embarrassed. She lost her former color, and she was simply sloppy. The originally fair face has become vicissitudes of life, and at the age of 25, it has become like a 30-year-old. Zhao Yuanyuan, you bitch, it's you who made me like this. I have collected your evidence, just wait for jail. If you don't want to go to prison, give me 3 million immediately. If I go abroad, I won't bother you anymore. I looked at the hysterical woman and shook her mobile phone. I have called your mother-in-law. Your future mother-in-law said that you ran away from marriage. How can you run away from marriage on a happy day? Xiao Shui, you are a good child. After I said this, Gu Shui's face was already distorted. She was scared and worried, and then a murderous intent was revealed in her eyes. But she still had no choice and was stopped by the bodyguard behind her. 7. In fact, Gu Shui not only made trouble in the center of the month, but even in the live broadcast room of the internet celebrity, describing what a terrible woman I am. I don't need to clarify. Gu Huai will send out a group photo of our love and the baby, and Gu Shui didn't believe what she said. My mother-in-law and I took Gu Shui back to the wedding. Gu Shui's future mother-in-law happened to come over and immediately changed her smile when she saw me. I'm sorry, dear, I didn't expect Xiao Shui to run away. It's okay. Just run away and break her leg later. As for the 3 million, it will be transferred to your account. I didn't dare to call you before, because Xiao Shui has a bad personality and likes to spend money on other men. When Gu Shui's future mother-in-law heard it, she was wearing a wedding dress for Gu Shui and twisted her waist fiercely. Gu Shui cried out in pain, but she still didn't want to wear a wedding dress. When the future mother-in-law saw my embarrassed face, she immediately pinched Gu Shui again and deliberately adjusted the painful place. Gu Shui cried out in pain. In the end, she was framed to the wedding site. Gu Shui begged her mother-in-law for mercy more than once, but her mother-in-law just asked for my opinion. Yuanyuan, Xiao Shui made a mistake. Do you want to forgive her? I said coldly on the side. Of course I can't forgive you, Mom, didn't you come like this too? Then send Xiaoxue to the institution for training. When my mother-in-law reminded me, Gu Shui suddenly panicked. When she heard that from her mother's mouth, she lost her temper and was left with pity. Even Gu Shui's future mother-in-law, in order to suppress Gu Shui, called Gu Shui's ex-boyfriend and set up 5 tables. Gu Shui cared about face the most, and now she can't raise her head. Even when he took the stage, Gu Shui finally opened his mouth. What on earth did our family do to make you do this to me? This is ridiculous. It turns out that the perpetrator doesn't remember the evil he has done at all. I didn't do anything. After all, I didn't do anything to you, Xiaoxue. 8. When I came to the training institution again, I had already contacted the teacher. The teacher greeted me very warmly, and I hurriedly told the teacher about Gu Shui's situation. As soon as the teacher heard it, he immediately said that he would train Gu Shui well. After talking about the training time and content, I walked to Gu Shui and touched her head with a smile. The wicked are afraid of people who are more evil than him. Are you afraid now? Study hard or you can't go out. Gu Shui's eyes stared at the boss, scared, confused and pitiful, and suddenly let Gu Shui kneel in front of me. Sister-in-law, let me go, okay? I beg you, let me go. I have never heard Gu Shui say the word sister-in-law, but now it sounds extremely ironic. I walked out of the training institution, and the wind blew outside. Winter is gone and spring is coming.